Hello, I'm Alessia. My journey began when I was a young hairdresser, freshly graduated and already working at a cozy salon in the heart of downtown. Those days were filled with simplicity, just me, my scissors, and a world ripe with possibilities. It was a typical Tuesday when Daniel walked into the salon for the first time. The entry bell chimed as he entered, looking somewhat uncertain if he was in the right place. His hair was wildly untamed, with thick curls that seemed to resist any form of grooming. "Are you open for a walk-in?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the hum of hairdryers and ongoing conversations. "Absolutely. Have a seat," I replied, gesturing to my chair. As he settled in, I draped the cape around him, securing it with a snap. "What are we thinking today?" I inquired. "Just make it look like I haven't been wrestling through bushes," he joked, offering a half-smile in the mirror. I chuckled and began to work, our conversation flowing effortlessly. We discovered a shared love for classic rock over modern pop music, which neither of us could bear. "I can't stand the electronic music everywhere these days," he complained. "Tell me about it." "I'd choose Zeppelin or Floyd any day," I agreed, continuing to snip away. Our chat meandered through favorite books and movies, making it feel as though we'd been friends for ages. By the time I finished, Daniel looked transformed, and his grateful smile hinted that this wouldn't be our last encounter. True enough, he returned every couple of weeks, always ensuring he sat in my chair. Our post-haircut coffees soon evolved into dinners, and before long, we found ourselves in a deeper relationship. A year later, we married in a simple ceremony in his parents' backyard, surrounded by close family. Finances were tight, so our honeymoon was a modest 4-day stay in a lakeside cabin, quaint despite its musty smell and lingering scent of fish. But we were blissful, wrapped up in our new life together. Then came Gabriel, our son, bringing joy and new challenges. Balancing work and motherhood was tough, especially with finances stretched thin, but Daniel was an incredible support, sharing in all duties without a word of complaint. Decades flew by in a flurry of life's moments. I wasn't just any hairdresser now. I was the one people waited weeks to see. Daniel excelled too, climbing to a top position in his company. Now, in a quiet house too large for just the two of us, life felt a little more subdued. Gabriel, grown and independent, lived nearby. The salon remained a hub of activity, a place where everyone shared their stories with me, perhaps drawn by my welcoming demeanor. 28 years have indeed passed swiftly, filled with both trials and triumphs. And at 50, life is still vibrant, filled with the echoes of scissors and stories, in the little salon downtown where it all began. On a particularly rainy afternoon, the salon door swung open, and in came Violet, completely soaked from the storm outside. She looked like she needed far more than just a hair dryer, her eyes holding a sadness that immediately caught my attention. It was clear she was seeking comfort as much as a new hairstyle. "Rough day, huh?" I asked as she settled into my chair, not minding the puddles her coat left on the floor. "You could say that," she sighed, removing her soaked hat to reveal a tangled mess of hair. "Just broke up with my boyfriend. It feels like my heart's been put through a wringer." "Well, you're in the right place for a pick-me-up," I told her, wrapping a towel around her shoulders. "Let's dry you off and spruce up your look. How about we try something bold and new to start afresh?" Violet nodded, a faint hope flickering in her eyes reflected in the mirror. "I'd like that. I really would." As I worked on transforming her drenched locks into a sleek new bob, we chatted about everything from favorite TV shows to the best local eateries. It turned out she was new in town, looking for a fresh start after things went south with her ex. I found myself not only giving styling tips, but also advice on settling into our community. By the time I finished, Violet's transformation was complete. The bob framed her face perfectly, and her smile began to reemerge. "I feel lighter already," she admitted, admiring her reflection. "Thanks, Alessia. Seriously." "Anytime, Violet. You know where to find me," I said, handing her a mirror to check the back. Just then, my son Gabriel surprised me with a visit during work hours. He'd been running errands and decided to drop by. His gaze quickly found Violet, and I noticed that same spark that had ignited between Daniel and me years ago. "Hey, Mom, who's this?" Gabriel tried to sound casual, but his interest was obvious. "This is Violet. Meet my son, Gabriel. He's usually not around during the day. Thinks he's too busy for his old mom," I joked, giving Gabriel a playful glare. "Nice to meet you, Violet." "And Mom, I'm never too busy for you," Gabriel retorted with a grin. Violet laughed, clearly charmed by his demeanor. "Nice to meet you too, Gabriel. Your mom's been telling me all about the town." "Yeah, well, I could show you some places if you like," Gabriel offered smoothly, to which I nearly rolled my eyes. "That'd be great," Violet said, her smile now bright and genuine. As they chatted about arranging a coffee outing, I tidied up my station, keeping an ear on their conversation. They clicked instantly, and soon Gabriel was leading her out to continue their chat over coffee. Watching them leave together, I felt a mix of emotions. Happiness for Gabriel finding someone who sparked his interest, yet concern too. Starting a relationship on the rebound can be complex, and I hoped he wouldn't end up heartbroken. Gabriel and Violet, who quickly became like a daughter to me, didn't waste time. They were married in a whirlwind of romance. While it was fast, seeing them so joyously made everything seem just right. We often had them over, filling our home with laughter. Violet would tease Gabriel about her taste in men, joking that she preferred them slender and athletic, prompting Gabriel to suck in his belly and flex like a bodybuilder, making us all burst into laughter. It was all in good fun, a testament to their spirited and loving relationship. After dinner, Violet would always jump up to help with the cleanup, insisting she couldn't just sit by while I did all the work. It truly warmed my heart to have such a thoughtful daughter-in-law. Meanwhile, Daniel and I were holding our own quite well. He had risen to a high position at his company and was always bustling with activity. However, subtle changes began to emerge in his routine that caught my attention. Initially, Daniel started working later and his business trips became more frequent. Whenever I questioned the extra hours or travel, he'd dismiss it with a casual, "It's just a busy season, Alessia. Got to make hay while the sun shines." I understood the demands of his job, but his newfound enthusiasm for fitness was what surprised me. One morning, I found him rummaging through our closet for workout clothes. "What's this all about?" I asked as he packed a gym bag. "Just trying to keep up with the younger guys at work," he replied with a laugh, adding, "Can't let them think I'm getting old." I teased him, leaning on the doorframe. "Well, look at you, Mr. Fitness." He grinned back, joking, "Who knows? Maybe I'll even get abs like Gabriel." The idea of Daniel, who usually avoided any strenuous activity, turning into a fitness enthusiast was amusing yet strange. However, a part of me was pleased he was taking better care of himself. Our life seemed nearly perfect. Our home was full of love and laughter. Our careers were prospering, and with Gabriel and Violet so content, the prospect of grandchildren felt just around the corner. But occasionally, when Daniel left for another sudden business trip or returned late from the gym, a nagging doubt would whisper to me. I tried to dismiss these thoughts as normal, mere adjustments in our routine. Still, I couldn't completely shake off the uneasy feeling. Watching Daniel pack for another trip, I'd ask, "Everything okay at work?" He'd reply, "Same as ever, just the grind," but his gaze didn't meet mine as it used to. I began to watch the clock more, noting his departures and arrivals, which seemed to grow increasingly irregular. His explanations became brief. Traffic delays, or helping out a colleague. One night, as I lay in bed waiting for him, the reality that despite the surface perfection, there was a fracture somewhere hit me. I hoped it was just my imagination running wild, a temporary phase that would pass because confronting any serious deviation in our marriage was something I wasn't ready to face. Then on a regular Thursday at the salon, everything changed. Lydia, a longtime client, came in excitedly sharing videos from her recent vacation. As she showed me a clip from a bustling restaurant, narrating their dining experience, my attention was abruptly captured by an image in the background, a couple in a deep kiss. My heart sank as I recognized Daniel and Violet, Gabriel's wife, entangled in the moment. Struggling to keep my composure, I managed to whisper, "Can you send that to me?" Lydia, puzzled by my sudden interest, nodded slowly and forwarded the video. My world, as perfect as it had seemed, was turning upside down. "Are you feeling okay? You seem a bit off," I asked gently, managing a weak smile. Shaking my head, I responded, "Yeah, just thought I recognized someone. Thanks." The rest of the day was a blur. My hands mechanically styled hair, but my thoughts were elsewhere, replaying a troubling video. In it, Daniel and Violet were together, an image that tormented me all day. I couldn't bring myself to call Daniel. Instead, once home, I dialed Gabriel, my voice tense but calm. "I need you to come over. It's urgent." When Gabriel arrived, his expression was laden with worry. "What's wrong, Mom?" Unable to look him in the eye, I handed him my phone, the video ready to play. "Just watch," I managed to say, my voice faltering. As he watched, the color drained from his face, his expression turning to one of shock and realization. "Dad and Violet?" His voice was a mix of disbelief and hurt. He looked at me, desperate for explanations. Before I could answer, the front door opened. Daniel and Violet entered, laughing carelessly. Daniel, still grinning, announced, "Guess who I gave a ride to today?" His cheerful banter halted as he noticed the somber mood. Gabriel slammed the phone down, the video still echoing their laughter, now horribly out of place. Daniel's smile vanished, his eyes darting between the phone and our stern faces. Violet's smile faltered as she caught on, seeing the video. The room's atmosphere shifted instantly, icy and tense. Daniel paled as if he'd seen a ghost, while Violet, with a cruel smirk, declared boldly, "I love him, Alessia. You're just too old for him." Her words were a slap. I felt a deep, hollow pain in my chest. How had I been so naive to welcome such deceit into our lives? Gabriel's anger was immediate. He stood, towering over Daniel. "I'm done with you, Dad. And you," he turned to Violet, "get out of my house?" Violet's laughter was sharp, her tone entitled. "And where am I supposed to go? I'm entitled to half of this apartment and alimony." Gabriel's reply was bitter. "The apartment was mine before we met, and it's only in my name. As for alimony, your infidelity has already settled that. You get nothing." Daniel then spoke up, his tone cold, calculating. "We need to talk about our assets, Alessia. We've been married for 28 years. I want half of everything." His audacity was astounding, focusing on finances, as if he hadn't just shattered our family. The ensuing divorce was bitter and prolonged. Each meeting was filled with venom, particularly from Daniel, who played the victim, attempting to tarnish my reputation to scrape more from the remnants of our life together. And Violet, ever spiteful, taunted me on the courthouse steps. "You're just an old woman, Alessia. Daniel wanted someone young and beautiful, like me." Her words cut deep, each one a dagger aimed to wound, highlighting a betrayal that was more than just of the heart. It was a shattering of my entire world. Throughout those long years we spent together, I would drive home feeling like a shadow of my former self, doubting my value and questioning each year we had shared. But amidst this turmoil, Gabriel, my son, was my unwavering support. His steadfast presence reminded me that not everything from my marriage was lost. Seeing his strength and moral fortitude, I realized that if my marriage had given me nothing else, it had blessed me with him. A man of integrity who stood for what was right, no matter the cost. One morning, as I stood before the mirror, I took a deep breath and made a solemn vow to myself. "Alessia, it's time to start anew, from the ground up." The reflection seemed to nod in agreement, cementing my resolve. A tough decision loomed ahead concerning the house. It was too filled with memories and too large for just me. The divorce terms stipulated we sell it and divide the proceeds. "Fresh start, Alessia," I whispered to myself while signing the papers at the realtor's office. Roger, a kind middle-aged agent, reassured me. "Trust me, you're making the right move." Heeding his advice, I purchased a quaint two-bedroom apartment closer to the city center, ideal for one. The day I moved in, I felt a palpable sense of relief as I unpacked boxes and set up my new space, eagerly embracing the chance to create something entirely my own. The next challenge was my career. My profession had always been a core part of my identity, and I was determined not to let it go. With some capital from the divorce and a renewed zeal, I set out to open my beauty salon. Finding the perfect location took patience. I toured numerous potential sites, each time visualizing the possibilities. When I finally discovered the ideal spot, a small, luminous storefront on a bustling street, I was certain. "I can see it now," I exclaimed to Gabriel, who had accompanied me for support. "Alessia's elegance, right there on the sign." His smile was encouraging. "It's perfect, Mom. You're going to make it something amazing." Launching the salon was an arduous journey filled with renovations, permits, and ordering supplies. Each step, though exhausting, brought a wave of accomplishment. This was my creation, my new beginning. The grand opening was a whirlwind of joy, with friends, longtime clients, and curious passers-by filling the newly vibrant space, their conversations and laughter infusing life into the once empty shop. 4 years have passed since the divorce. Reflecting, I can hardly recognize the woman I was when all this began. My business has thrived, exceeding my wildest hopes, supported wonderfully by the community. In return, I've strived to offer a welcoming and warm space. 3 years post-divorce, Gabriel remarried Lisa, whom he met at a community event. They've since welcomed twins, a boy and a girl. Seeing him so content and fulfilled has brought me a new kind of joy I never knew I was missing. Now, as I lock up the salon at night, the last rays of the sunset casting a warm glow through the front windows, I often pause and reflect on this journey. Every rise and fall, every challenge and triumph has reshaped me. I am not the same person I was, and for that, I am profoundly grateful. In those quiet moments, surrounded by the hum of hairdryers winding down, I realize how much I've grown and how much I have yet to achieve. Surrounded by the familiar scent of shampoo in my bustling salon, I found a newfound strength. The betrayal that once seemed insurmountable now fortified me, making me fiercer and more resolute than ever. Unexpectedly, I received a call from Daniel, my ex-husband. His tone casual, almost friendly, he struck with words that stung sharply. "Alessia, I think it's only fair I get half of your beauty salon. It's doing well, and frankly, it was started with my money, since I was the main breadwinner for so long." His audacity was breathtaking, claiming a share of the very business I built with my post-divorce earnings. Although infuriated, I responded calmly, "Okay, Daniel, let's meet and discuss it." After hanging up, I immediately called Gabriel, who was livid upon hearing Daniel's demand. He suggested we dig deeper into Daniel's current affairs, even proposing we hire a private investigator. Agreeing, it was time to expose whatever Daniel and his new partner were concealing. We decided to meet in a crowded downtown cafe. Arriving early, I spotted them from afar. Daniel, looking older but striving for youthfulness, and his significantly younger wife Violet, who was visibly pregnant. As I sat down, bracing for their charade, Daniel wasted no time. "Alessia, thanks for coming. With the baby on the way, Violet wants to start her salon. We think a share of your business would be a good start for our family's future." Violet smirked smugly at me, as if the battle was already won. I forced a smile, listening to Daniel's grand plans for his new family, thinking how deluded he was. When he finally paused, I seized the moment. "Daniel, you're living in a fantasy. This business you so desire was built entirely without your money or influence. And about this child you're so excited for," I paused, my smile fading as I slid a series of photos across the table. The photos clearly showed Violet with another man, not just casually, but leaving a hotel together. "And there's more," I continued, my voice steady amidst the unfolding drama. "Daniel, remember when you had chickenpox so severely at 37? The doctor said it left you infertile. I didn't have the heart to tell you then, thinking it would crush you." The color drained from Daniel's face, and Violet's eyes widened in horror. Turning to him, her hands trembling, she faced his stunned silence. "You're lying," Violet shrieked, her voice cracking under the strain. Daniel, hit by the truth, turned to Violet, his face twisted in anger. Is this true? Are you cheating on me? The cafe had fallen silent, all eyes riveted on our table. Violet began sobbing, her earlier arrogance dissolving into public humiliation. Daniel, I can explain, she stammered, but Daniel was already on his feet, shouting, I don't want to hear it. We're done. Get out of my life. His outburst caused a scene, marking the collapse of his world. As he stormed out, the echoes of their disrupted lives lingered in the silent cafe. I rose from my chair, smoothing down my skirt with deliberate calmness. I think this meeting is over, I declared, ensuring my voice carried clearly to the nearby tables. I want nothing more to do with either of you. As I walked away, the last image I held was of Violet crying and Daniel shouting, while the cafe staff hurried over to intervene. Stepping out into the sunlight, I felt a significant burden lift from my shoulders. A few days later, in the serene aftermath of a bustling day at the salon, the familiar jingle of the bell over the door caught my attention. I looked up to see Gabriel entering, his face lit with a joyful smile. Hey, Mom, how's the champion of independence doing today? He teased as he walked over to embrace me. I chuckled, handing him a broom to help clean up. Oh, stop it, I playfully scolded, but I won't lie, it feels really good. That's what I like to hear, Gabriel responded, beginning to sweep. So, what's next for you? I paused, leaning on my broom, and shared the thoughts that had been forming in my mind. Well, I've been thinking about that a lot. I want to do more than just run the salon. I want to give back somehow. Gabriel looked thoughtful as he nodded. You've got a lot to offer, Mom. Maybe some kind of mentorship program? For young women starting out? That's exactly what I was thinking, I replied, excitement rising within me. I want to help them build their futures, ensure they have the support they need. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as I put our ideas into motion. I reached out to local community centers and schools, setting up workshops and talks. The response was incredible. Many young women attended, eager to learn and grow. One evening, after a particularly successful workshop, I sat in my salon, reflecting on the transformative journey. The phone rang, and I answered it in a thoughtful mood. Alessia's Elegance. This is Alessia. Mom, it's me. Gabriel's cheerful voice came through. Just wanted to check in. How was the workshop today? It was fantastic, Gabriel. These girls, they're so bright and full of potential. It makes me feel like I'm doing something worthwhile, I replied, a smile spreading across my face. That's awesome, Mom. I knew you'd be great at this. We chatted a bit more, and after hanging up, I was enveloped by a profound sense of peace. I had come so far from the woman who thought her life was over after the divorce. Now here I was, making a real impact, feeling more fulfilled than ever before.
Stop being lazy. If you're not going to help with the chores, then just go. My mother-in-law, Cecilia, barked at me. Rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I pulled myself up from the couch. A quick glance at the clock told me I'd only been asleep for about half an hour. I was just trying to catch a quick cat nap during a hectic day of balancing housework and my job, but it looked like Cecilia had other plans. You don't deserve a break. Get cracking. If not, hit the road, she demanded, glaring at me, clearly irritated. That seemed to be her catchphrase every time I woke up. Was she just stuck on repeat? Half out of it, I stared back at her, wondering, is she really trying to kick me out? Well, if that's what she wanted. Fine then. See ya, I muttered, heading to my room. As I walked, I thought to myself, well, maybe I shouldn't have fallen asleep in the living room. As soon as I got into my room, I locked the door and crawled into bed. I closed my eyes, determined to get out of this house as soon as I woke up. My name is Hannah, a 32-year-old who works from home. I'm married to a 27-year-old guy named Adrian. He's 5 years younger and quite the looker. At our wedding, people couldn't stop commenting. When did you land such a hot younger guy? My friends would tease. Who knew Hannah was so shallow? I remember turning red and retorting, it's not like that. I didn't marry Adrian just because he was eye candy. Sure, I liked the way he looked, but but I fell for him because I felt a need to be there for him. We both worked at the same company originally, and he was my subordinate. Among the new hires, he was diligent but also quite a klutz, prone to making errors. But instead of making things awkward, he had this infectious cheerfulness that always lightened the mood. That was the kind of guy he was. Sometimes, after work, we'd hit a bar with coworkers and have heart-to-heart chats. I thought it was best to keep things casual since we were just office buddies, but he didn't hesitate to open up. "I'm still living with my parents, while everyone else is out on their own," Adrian would say with a sigh. "I just don't see the point in moving out yet." His honesty surprised me. He often felt like his dates were more interested in his looks than in who he really was. "They say the vibe's off, that I'm just not what they want," he'd say, shaking his head. I knew he wasn't Mr. Perfect. I saw his goof-ups at work all the time, but somehow that made his personal blunders kind of cute to me. I guess I fell for him before he even realized it. Maybe he felt comfortable because, even though I was his boss and older, I never meddled in his personal life. He started asking me out more and more. Then, when I decided to quit my job to launch my own business, he dropped a bombshell after my farewell party. "I don't want us to be separated like this," he confessed awkwardly, staring at his shoes. "I've been holding back, but I have feelings for you. I feel at ease when I'm around you. I want you to be there for me," he admitted. His confession was sweet, if not a little clumsy, but instead of promising to make me happy, his words were all about how I could be there for him. Still, his sincerity won me over, and we started dating. At the time, I probably should have sought advice about dating Adrian. But thinking my friends would only mock me, I kept our relationship secret, even from my parents. Whenever they'd ask, "So when's the big day?" I'd dodge the question, afraid of the barrage of comments I knew would follow. I didn't tell them about Adrian until the ring was already on my finger. Looking back, maybe someone would have asked the tough questions. "Isn't he just leeching off you, Hannah?" Or, "What's he really bringing to the table?" I was usually the one paying for our outings since I was earning more. Adrian never seemed to mind. In fact, I can't recall him ever reaching for his wallet. He'd always flash me that wide grin and say, "Thanks again," and it never struck me as odd at the time. Now I wonder if he was just taking advantage. Adrian had this mentality, where it was normal for the older person to pick up the slack, but he thought it was crucial to show gratitude. He didn't see anything wrong with it. Maybe he saw me more as a trusty grown-up than a girlfriend. In the professional world, seniors usually pick up the tab for juniors, and it seemed like he applied the same logic to our dates. We tied the knot before anyone could point out the odd dynamics in our relationship. My folks were thrilled when they heard wedding bells, but Adrian's mom wasn't exactly overjoyed when she learned I was 5 years older than him. She gave me a once-over, then turned to Adrian and asked, "Are you sure about this? You need to think about kids too. I thought you'd end up with someone younger." Adrian just shrugged, grinning as usual. Ever heard the phrase, "an older wife makes for a better life"? I can be a bit of an airhead at times, so having Hannah to catch my slip-ups is ideal. We're a match made in heaven, don't you think? His mom, though caught off guard, didn't put up any further fuss about our wedding after that. I mean, she didn't seem totally against it before we got hitched, but now that we're sharing a roof, she's downright critical of our lifestyle. Honestly, I almost wish she had objected from the beginning if this is how she was going to act. One day, she's barking, "Hannah, you haven't cleaned my room today, have you? Get your chores done before you hide out in your room." Adrian and I moved in with his folks last winter after his dad unexpectedly passed. We were concerned about his mom living alone, so Adrian suggested we move in with her. Honestly, I wasn't thrilled about shacking up with my mother-in-law, who had given me the cold shoulder right from the start, but I couldn't bear the thought of leaving her high and dry. So Adrian and I ended up moving into his childhood home to keep an eye on her. However, this marked the start of my own personal nightmare. Despite being Adrian's pick, his mom never really took a shine to me. From the day we set up shop, she cornered me while he was busy unpacking in his room, whispering, "This house doesn't have room for freeloaders. You'd better earn your keep." Adrian had told me his mom was thrilled about us staying, but as I suspected, it seemed she was over the moon to have her boy back, not so much his wife. After she left, I let out a sigh, careful not to let her hear it. Could I make it in this house? The verdict was out in less than 3 months. The answer was a resounding no. It became clear pretty quickly that a decent life with a mother-in-law like that was impossible. I had always thought moms doted on their kids, even when they were all grown up. Adrian's mom took it to a whole new level. If there was anything on his plate that didn't suit his fancy, she'd avoid it. She'd painstakingly debone fish for him, making it seem like he wasn't a grown man, but a little boy. Her kindness, however, never extended to me. Quite the opposite. She seemed to view me as an adversary, forever saying things like, "Will you get a move on with the house chores already?" I'll never understand why he brought such an incompetent wife home. What really got to me was that no matter how many times I explained myself, she couldn't wrap her head around the concept of working from home. I told her, I do work at home. I'm not a slacker just because I'm remote. But she labeled me lazy and blew up over me not doing housework, yelling, "Slackers don't get a free pass." It was absurd how she never pulled these stunts when Adrian was around. I figured I'd run myself into the ground at this rate, so I started recording her with a voice recorder, hoping to catch her in the act. The moment Adrian left the house, she'd pounce. "Stop twiddling your thumbs, you lazy elf," she'd sneer, using words she'd never dare to say in front of him. I recorded everything and played it back to Adrian when he got home, but after hearing it, he just shrugged. "Well, my mom has had her hands full as a full-time homemaker. Please just grin and bear it and do your family duty." I wanted to scream at him, "She's your mom, not mine." He was okay with it because she was his mom, and he had never been on the receiving end of her attitude. But I couldn't stand her. I thought we should have a serious conversation, but with work piling up, and Cecilia, as usual, offloading housework onto me, I was running on fumes. Around lunchtime, I hit a wall and decided to sneak in a quick nap. I crashed on the living room couch, hoping to recharge. Not long after, Cecilia jolted me awake. "Quit lounging around. If you're not going to pitch in with the chores, then leave." Rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, I glanced at the clock. I'd only been asleep for about half an hour. I wasn't slacking. I was just trying to catch a quick break during a hectic day balancing work and housework. But she wasn't having it. When I looked up, she was glaring at me. "You don't deserve a break. Get cracking. If not, hit the road," she stated angrily. Why was she coming down on me when all I was trying to do was catch some rest? She called me a slacker, but she was home all the time and never lifted a finger. Wasn't she the real slacker here? I was fuming. My blood was boiling, and I finally snapped. "Fine then. See ya." I shot back and stormed off to my room. Honestly, I probably shouldn't have fallen asleep in the living room, but I couldn't take her nagging anymore. As soon as I got to my room, I locked the door and crawled into bed, deciding that I'd leave the house the moment I woke up. I wondered if Cecilia really thought I'd leave like she suggested. This time, at least, she didn't disturb my sleep. When I woke up, it was well past dinner time. Normally, Cecilia would be barking, "What are you slacking off for? Adrian's going to be home soon. Start making dinner now." But there were no loud voices this time. On a hunch, I tiptoed downstairs, careful not to make a sound. The house was quiet. Neither Cecilia nor Adrian was there, and her shoes weren't at the entrance. I thought maybe they had gone out to eat together when he got home. Not wanting to see either of them, I figured this was my chance. Quickly, I started packing my things. As I packed, I called a friend who lived nearby. She listened to my whole story and exclaimed, "What? Your mother-in-law's the worst. Run away. I'll help you escape." An hour later, she showed up at our house in a small truck, ready to help me get out of there. By then, both Cecilia and Adrian had returned from their meal. They were shocked to see the truck parked in front of the house, even more so when they saw me loading my belongings onto it. Cecilia's lips curled into a smirk, as if she were saying, "Finally, you're leaving." This is refreshing. Adrian, standing next to her, looked bewildered. He didn't seem to grasp what was happening, but Cecilia? She looked almost pleased. Adrian approached me with a worried look. "Hannah? What on earth? Are you collecting trash?" he asked. I stared at him, trying to hold back my frustration. He still didn't get it. He was the kind of person who didn't think it was a big deal even after hearing the recording of his mother's verbal abuse toward me. He probably didn't know or want to know how much pressure I'd been under from her. I motioned toward the truck. "Does this look like trash to you, Adrian?" "I'm leaving," I replied firmly. He looked confused, his gaze shifting to the furniture. It should have been obvious that I wasn't here for trash collection, but to leave this house. The thing was, he wasn't even aware of the furniture I owned. What's in the truck is all I had, I thought bitterly. In the end, he was never interested in me at all. I glanced at Cecilia before turning to Adrian. "I couldn't keep this hidden any longer. I told you that your mom was verbally abusing me when you weren't home, right?" I questioned him. "Oh, the verbal abuse," Adrian replied dismissively. "You mean that thing you let me hear the other day? I think it's okay not to worry too much about it. I don't think Mom meant it." I could hardly believe my ears. "What do you mean, it's okay not to worry?" "I talked to you because I was in pain, Adrian. I can't understand why you're so carefree and cheerful." Adrian fidgeted, his usual nonchalance cracking under my glare. Meanwhile, Cecilia stood there smirking, watching us as if this confrontation might finally lead to my exit from Adrian's life. Perhaps she hoped I would leave him, thinking this was her chance, but it was obvious to me that she hadn't considered the damage her actions would cause. "You knew I've been busy recently," I said sharply. Despite me telling her several times, your mother kept calling me a slacker, interfering with my work, dumping all the housework on me. Even when I told her I didn't have time, she pushed everything on me, searching for things to criticize. "I'm done with this," I concluded. "That can't be," Adrian uttered, staring at me in confusion. "Adrian, if you don't believe me, that's fine," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not expecting your help anymore. Has there ever been a time when you actually did something for me?" I asked disappointedly. Even Cecilia, who had been gleefully enjoying the spectacle, seemed taken aback by my words. She snapped, "What a thing to say while being supported by Adrian." But it wasn't me who looked shocked this time. It was Adrian, his face turning pale. There was something he hadn't shared with his mother, and now it was about to come out. "Hold on, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm not supporting Hannah." Cecilia's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Mom," Adrian said quietly, "I'm unemployed." Cecilia blinked, her smirk faltering. "Come again." "Yes," Adrian continued, swallowing hard. "I've been out of work for a year now." Cecilia was speechless. She glanced at me, then back at Adrian. She had no idea. Adrian hadn't told her. The whole time she thought I was the one leeching off him. The truth was, I was the one paying the bills. I quit my corporate job, launched a startup, and kept us afloat while he loafed around, pretending to job hunt. "So you're unemployed," Cecilia finally said, her voice rising in disbelief. This woman living off my son's dime," my mother-in-law started to stammer. "Stop it," Adrian interrupted, finally standing up to her. "Mom, I haven't supported Hannah in over a year. She's the one who's been covering everything. Her startup, the bills, everything." Cecilia's face was flushed with anger, her voice rising. "Can you believe it? Not only did she lack gratitude, but she also holed up in her room, avoiding chores. So much for an older wife making a better life. I had to boot her out because my son doesn't need a wife who sits around. Now he can just take care of me." "Whoa, what are you talking about?" Adrian shot back, his frustration boiling over. "I'm the one who's been unemployed. I've been dragging my feet while Hannah has been working her butt off." Cecilia stood there, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief, unable to comprehend why her son was so upset. "You're unemployed?" she finally whispered. "Yes, and I've been thinking about divorce for some time now," I said calmly, and added, "Living alone sounds heavenly compared to dealing with this." I handed Adrian a lawyer's business card. His face crumpled, like he was about to cry. His mother, still reeling from the revelation, stood frozen next to him. "What am I going to do without you, Hannah?" Adrian asked, his voice trembling. I sighed. "You're a grown-up, Adrian. Don't count on people to take care of you forever." He had lost his job because he couldn't handle responsibility, always screwing up, brushing off consequences, and eventually quitting when things got tough. Reflecting on our relationship, it felt like he was more interested in finding a caretaker than loving me. I used to love his goofy side, but after years of one-sided commitment and constant nagging from Cecilia, I was done. Well, I said with a final glance at them both, now that you won't have a jobless wife around, I hope you two get along. I'm not planning on looking after you anymore. With that, I hopped into the passenger seat of the small truck, ready to leave. Adrian tried to stop me, desperation in his voice. Don't go for the divorce. Please don't leave me. Before I could respond, my friend in the driver's seat yelled out, Zip it, freeloader! Adrian stood there, silent, finally grasping his situation. Since then, I've started living alone. Word from a friend is that Adrian and Cecilia sold the family home. They realized they couldn't maintain it with both of them unemployed. Apparently, they're now working part-time at a supermarket. But that's none of my business anymore. I've moved on, and for the first time in years, I'm using my time effectively, free from anyone else's burden. I had envisioned my long-awaited wedding with my beloved as a joyous occasion, blessed by many and cherished as a lifelong memory. But never did I imagine it would turn into such a disastrous situation. I won't forgive the wrecking of the ceremony. And the situation took an unexpected turn because of a certain person. My name is Claire, 28 years old. While working for a foreign company, my days are busy and hectic. Even though I have decided to get married this time, the partner is a person from a business associate, Danny, who is 2 years older than me. Danny is always very laid back and surprisingly innocent for his age. Every day with him is enjoyable, and my heart feels at ease. We decided to have the wedding ceremony first, because I wanted to submit the marriage registration on our anniversary. My parents live overseas due to work circumstances. For now, I need to inform Danny's parents about it. Danny's parents gave me the impression of an ordinary, kind-hearted father and mother. They applied themselves in guiding Danny and helping him into a top university, and their influence is evident. With daily pleasantries and these sweet gestures, they listened to our story with smiles on their faces. Are your parents overseas? His mother asked. Yes, I replied. So you're having the ceremony first and then submitting the marriage registration? She asked again, glancing at Danny. That's right, Danny confirmed. We've been discussing it together, waiting to match the registration with our anniversary, he added. I see, she said, her tone neutral but lingering. I hope the ceremony goes well. I felt a slight unease at her remark. Was there a deeper meaning behind her words? Something about the way she said it bothered me. Nevertheless, since my mother-in-law was smiling, I decided to let it go and enjoy some light-hearted conversation. After a while, my parents-in-law stood up. We'll be in the kitchen doing some work. You two can relax in the living room, she said. Left alone, we looked at Danny's childhood photo album and watched DVDs from his younger days. At some point, I needed to use the bathroom, so I went in search of it and overheard my parents-in-law's voices coming from the kitchen. Hey, what do you think of Claire? His father asked quietly. You mean her? His mother responded. I'm a little worried. It's strange, isn't it? She continued. Having the ceremony before the marriage registration? That's true, his father agreed. But Danny chose her, so what can we do? Danny mentioned something before, but didn't that girl drop out of high school? My future mother-in-law inquired. Drop out of high school? Danny's father repeated, surprised. In this day and age, that's a bit concerning. Exactly, Danny's mother agreed. Danny's such a good kid, and yet he ends up with someone who lacks education and common sense. Dropping out of high school means low income, doesn't it? I'm really worried. I overheard everything, and it hit me hard. They didn't think highly of me. My heartbeat quickened. What should I do? To think that I'd be judged this way on our first meeting. My parents live overseas, so I can't rely on them for support. I wanted to get along with my mother-in-law for situations like this, but it seemed impossible now. I rushed back to Danny and told him everything. Danny, it seems like I'm not well liked by your parents. What? Why would you say that? Did something happen? He asked, his face full of concern. On my way to the bathroom, I overheard them talking in the kitchen, I explained, trying to stay calm. They're worried about you marrying me because they think I'm poorly educated and have no common sense. Danny looked confused. My parents said that? His eyes widened in disbelief. They really said that? Yes, I replied, hurt. Your mother even called me a high school dropout. Danny scratched his head. I don't understand. I never told them that. I definitely told them that you went to school here until high school and then studied abroad. I never said you were a dropout. I sighed. I know, but they think otherwise. They think I have low education and low income because of it. Danny looked frustrated. Look, I don't think my parents mean any harm. They're just a bit old-fashioned. Please don't take it too seriously. I'll talk to them, he reassured me. His reassurances didn't completely ease my discomfort. Even though I was troubled, Danny remained optimistic. I decided not to argue further, hoping that Danny would explain things to his parents before the wedding. I tried to push my worries aside. Months later, the day of the wedding finally arrived. I hadn't seen my in-laws since that awkward day, and although I felt a bit anxious, I was in good spirits. My relationship with Danny was strong, and I believed it would be a perfect day. Just as I finished my makeup, there was a knock on the door. Expecting one of the staff, I opened it, but it was my mother-in-law. Mother? What's wrong? I asked, my voice tinged with apprehension. Where are your parents? She demanded, raising an eyebrow. I wanted to greet them since they're the bride's family, but I can't find them anywhere. Shouldn't they have arrived early? I hesitated. I'm sorry, I began, but their flight was delayed. They called me this morning and said they might arrive a little late. Her eyes narrowed. What? Being late for the wedding? What kind of common sense is that? I apologized again. I'm really sorry, but they're coming from overseas. It's out of their control. She raised her voice. Excuses? This is exactly why I didn't want this. How could you expect something different from someone as uncultured as you? Being late for a wedding? Ridiculous, she concluded. Not only was I being ridiculed, but my family was as well. They had rearranged their busy schedules to travel overseas for this special day, and here they were being criticized. Anger surged inside me. Sure, being late wasn't ideal, but it wasn't their fault. Why should they be subjected to this unfair judgment? But with the ceremony minutes away, I knew arguing with my mother-in-law would only cause a scene. I swallowed my pride and replied, I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but I promise my family will be here as soon as they can. My voice trembled as I spoke, but I managed to keep it together. After my mother-in-law left the waiting room, fuming with anger, I was left alone, quietly shedding tears. In the end, my parents didn't make it to the ceremony, and the reception began as planned. Many attended, celebrating joyfully. While worrying about my parents' arrival, I decided to enjoy the reception and focus on the food, trying to forget the unpleasant experience earlier. However, at that moment, a woman's voice echoed through the venue, loud and filled with frustration. Oh, I can't stand it anymore. It was my mother-in-law, her face flushed from alcohol. Was this really happening? Seemingly intolerant of alcohol, she was already swaying after just one drink. She glared at me, struggling toward my direction, before shouting, Cancel the wedding right now! The attendees began to murmur, and the venue descended into chaos. Ignoring everyone's stares, she continued her tirade. Who do you think you are? Dropping out of high school and lacking common sense? Marrying our Danny? You're way out of your league? She snatched a glass from the table, downed it in one gulp, and fixed me with an intense glare. We don't want to drop out like you in this family. Get out of our sight. At that moment, I felt the anger I had been holding back finally erupt. They were his parents, and I had thought they might continue to be involved in our lives. That was why I'd been enduring it all. But now I didn't care anymore. I stared back at her, my voice steady. I understand your concerns, but I did not drop out of high school. I graduated from a university overseas, I stated angrily. My mother-in-law staggered, her drunkenness evident, as relatives held her back. Don't lie. If you graduated from a university overseas, show me your diploma, she demanded, and even pulled at the hem of my dress, trying to strike me. My wedding dress was now in disarray. Ignoring the staff's attempts to intervene, she poured alcohol over my head. I absolutely won't approve of this marriage, she screamed. I had enough. I was about to throw her out when the doors to the hall suddenly opened. Sorry for being late, a voice called out. Everyone turned as my sister Amber stepped in. She walked straight up to me and hugged me tightly, glaring at my mother-in-law. I heard everything from outside. How dare you speak to my sister like that? My mother-in-law's face paled as she stumbled backward, eyes wide. Why are you here? She asked. Why? Amber replied sharply. To attend my sister's wedding, of course. Your sister? My mother-in-law stammered. Amber gave a firm nod. Yes, her sister. I'm Amber, a world-famous actress. You've probably seen me on your husband's company's commercials. She sighed. I never expected you to be this kind of person. I'm disappointed. The venue buzzed with whispers as people realized who my sister was. Amber continued. I'm thinking of terminating my contract with your husband's company. Being associated with people like you would damage my image. Wait a minute. My mother-in-law panicked, her face growing pale. My father-in-law, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. Please, if my wife's actions lead to the termination of that contract, my position at the company, please reconsider. Amber turned to him coldly. I don't know about that. Your wife treated my sister terribly and you just stood by. I won't let anyone hurt my family, she concluded. My in-laws stood there in stunned silence, unable to find words. Suddenly, my father-in-law's face turned red with rage. Don't mess with me, he shouted. Why should my life be ruined by someone like you? It's your sister's fault for having such a confusing background. If she had explained herself properly from the beginning, we wouldn't have misunderstood, he added. I cut in, unable to hold back. Excuse me? You judged me as uneducated without asking me a single question. What's the point in arguing now? My father-in-law scowled. It's your fault. If you'd told us the truth from the start, I would have treated you better. Even if you really were uneducated, I would have forgiven you. Oh, please, my sister snapped. I can't even have a conversation with you. Both you and your wife are terrible people. It's a pity Danny turned out so wonderful despite you. In a sudden burst of aggression, my father-in-law grabbed Amber by the collar. She struggled in pain, and before I could intervene, my mother-in-law stepped forward, smirking. She could use a little pain, she sneered. I don't care if she's a model. She's getting carried away. Seeing my sister in pain, I felt my heart pound with anger. But before I could react, Danny's voice cut through the room. Enough! He shouted, his voice filled with fury. At the sound of his voice, my father-in-law flinched, letting go of my sister. Didn't I explain it to you many times? Danny's voice shook with emotion. Claire graduated from a university overseas and I love her. To ruin our wedding like this is unforgivable. I can't accept it anymore. If you were real parents, you'd want your son's happiness, not destroy it. He turned to his mother, his voice hard. I'm sorry, but I can't bear this anymore. I'm severing all ties. Danny, are you joking? Wait! My mother-in-law cried out in desperation, but Danny ignored them. My mother-in-law collapsed, sobbing, while my father-in-law sat down, looking lost and broken. The atmosphere of the ceremony turned somber, and finally, the venue staff escorted them outside. Somehow we managed to finish the reception. After we bid farewell to the attendees, my sister turned to me, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, I got carried away and said too much. No, it's okay, I reassured her. Are you all right, big sister? I'm happy you stood up for me. Thank you. My sister blushed and hugged me tightly. Claire, congratulations. I hope you'll be happy. Since then, Danny has refused all contact with his parents. They've tried reaching out, but he hasn't responded, nor has he told them our new address. We now live peacefully, just the two of us. Claire, I'm really sorry about my parents, Danny often says, still feeling guilty. It's fine, I smile. I'm happy now, and I'm really glad I married you, Danny. He smiles back, full of love. I'll spend my whole life making you happy, Claire. Thank you, I say, holding his hand. I'm counting on you. I no longer worry about my in-laws. Surrounded by people who love me, I can enjoy this happiness. We're planning our honeymoon in the country where my family lives. From now on, I'll cherish only those who truly value me.